if you're experiencing high levels of anxiety and want to find a way to reduce it, then I'm going to show you in this video the exact technique I used for many years that will help to reduce anxiety right now. Hi, welcome back to Mental Health Power. So in this video I'm going to show you how, by using a very specific technique that I learned many years ago and I developed as well, I was able to consistently reduce and manage high levels of anxiety. So firstly, understand that this is not a long-term solution. This is more of a short-term one that is used to manage the high levels of anxiety if you're experiencing that. Even if you're not experiencing high levels of anxiety, but just a more reasonable level, this is still extremely useful and can help pretty much manage that as well. So firstly, we need to understand that anxiety is multi-layered. So often when we experience anxiety, because it can be such an unpleasant experience, especially for people who experience it at a high level, our normal instinct is to try to get away from it. So we often maybe don't notice everything that's happening. So we can divide it into three main sets of experiences or symptoms that happen. So this will vary depending on the level of anxiety, but if we take high anxiety, often what will happen is a person will start having thoughts that are racing around their mind that are very difficult to control. These thoughts are normally very negative. They might start having thoughts about the worst case scenario or the most catastrophic thing that could happen. This also can lead to what's known as all or nothing thinking. So they may start seeing things in a very black and white way. So either it's all going to be this or all going to be that. So you can imagine, let's say someone wants to try and pass a driving test. And then maybe because they're anxious about it, they may think that this is their one and only chance to do it, or they're never going to be able to do it again, just as an example. And also because when you're in anxiety, you're essentially in some way feeling threatened, or you're perceiving there to be a threat. This can create a lot of paranoia, so they can have thoughts that are often very suspicious, or you gain this heightened sense of awareness of potential threats, which is kind of what paranoia is. And then on an emotional level, of course, it does stem from fear. So yes, anxiety is still a level of fear. From that, you get this general sense of uneasiness. And with the uneasiness, then you can also become hypersensitive. So things that would not normally make you feel worried or anxious will all of a sudden start to make you feel that way. This, of course, also leads to stress. It can also lead to anger, because some people, if they do feel threatened, then they're more likely to get irritated, to get angry as well, as a way to protect their own boundaries. And generally speaking, there's a level of tension that they'll feel as well. Now, on a physical level, so in the body, they'll start having their heart racing, so their heart will beat much, much faster to pump blood around, so blood pressure will go up. Their breaths will also start to get more shorter and more shallower. I believe that's because it's trying to take in more oxygen. When we're under stress and when we are anxious, when we're in a state of fear, our immune system significantly drops in its efficiency. So when we are anxious, when we're stressed, our body produces the hormone called cortisol. It's known as the stress hormone. Now, if we have too much cortisol in our body, that actually reduces the white blood cells' ability to act efficiently. So literally when we're stressed, our immune system can effectively shut down depending on the level of stress. So we're more likely to get sick. You may have noticed that at the times where you've been stressed, you're actually more likely to get sick. In fact, some people only get sick when they're stressed, and that's because their immune system now is significantly weaker. Because they now are not breathing as deeply as they would in a more relaxed state, there's less oxygen flowing through their body, which means there's less oxygen going to their brain, which of course is going to make that less efficient, which makes thinking a bit more difficult as well. This is ultimately because the fight or flight response in the brain has been triggered. So there's a perceived threat of some kind, whether it's physical, emotional, or mental. So the fight or flight response is triggered to produce cortisol, to produce all of these experiences and symptoms, because this is ultimately putting them in a position that could help them to survive. And of course, when you do experience anxiety and stress, your muscles become more tense. So that's one of the things people notice, that their shoulders go up a bit, they feel tension in the stomach, just generally in their whole body, they'll experience much more muscle tension. So why is this important? This is because most of these things, if not all of them, are essentially happening automatically. So they are not necessarily being controlled directly by us. And so this means that these are all being controlled, or most of them are being controlled by the subconscious mind. And I've mentioned this in my other videos, especially the one I did where I go deep into explaining the root cause of anxiety. I explain that the subconscious mind controls most of us. So it's supposed to be about 90 to 95% of our mind is subconscious, meaning it runs automatically. This is where our habits are formed, and when we practice something enough times, it becomes a habit and then just happens automatically. But also body functions and things we've done over and over again, whether mental or emotional, become automatic as well, unless we learn to manage to take control of that. So because these are controlled by the subconscious, this can give the impression that we don't have control over it. So when we do something manually, we are using our conscious mind. What's interesting is breathing is unique because we can consciously control our breathing, but our subconscious mind can do it for us as well. So we can manually breathe or we can automatically breathe. So this is why breathing is unique, because it's probably the only thing that we can control manually and automatically, so consciously or subconsciously. There might be a few others, but the only other one I can think of is blinking. But blinking doesn't really have much of an effect on your body as much as breathing does. So when you change your breathing, you are then gradually controlling all of these, because when you are experiencing anxiety, especially at high levels, your breathing will shorten, and then you'll start to experience either all of these or some of these, probably most of these. It will depend on the person, right? So by controlling your breathing, by slowing it down, you gradually then start to change all of these. But it's not just breathing. You need to also see that where you place your attention also has a big, big difference as well. So when you place your attention, so you can place your attention on external things, or things in your environment, but you can also place your attention, of course, on your body and what's going on in your mind and your emotions. So that's the next point to keep in mind. And of course, when you're doing that, when you're paying attention to what's going on within you, you'll notice not just physical sensations, like let's say the muscle tension or the heart beating, but of course you have the emotional sensations too. So for example, the tension, the stress, and the feeling of unease. So this is important because whether you're noticing the physical sensation or the emotional sensation, there is another side to them, which is known as resistance. So let's say if you imagine that let's say you're feeling anxious and you place your attention on the feeling of anxiety, there will be that feeling of uneasiness, but on top of that, you'll notice there'll be physical tension as well, right? So what will happen is you've got the feeling of anxiety, but then you have the resistance on top of that, which is that tension. And this, I believe, is like a almost like a coping mechanism, a survival mechanism, because let's say this is the anxiety and this is the tension on top of it. The tension is trying to suppress or to get away from the feeling of anxiety, because the feeling of anxiety is unpleasant, so sometimes it can be seen as something to get away from. So keeping those 3 points in mind, this exact technique combines all of these, and I'll explain now exactly what you do. So of course, the first thing you want to do is you want to pay attention to your breathing. So if you're feeling anxious, most likely your breathing is going to be short and quick, which of course means that you're not going to have a lot of oxygen going into your body. That's of course going to make you feel more tense. So the first thing you want to start doing is to start prolonging your breaths. So let's say this is the rhythm of your breathing when you're anxious. So let's say you're breathing in for 2 seconds and breathing out for 2 seconds, which of course isn't going to give your body what it needs. So let's say it's like in and out, so it's very sharp breaths. So you then want to start prolonging the breath. So instead of 2 seconds in and out, you then want to move it to 3 seconds in and out, then maybe 3 in, 4 out, and so on and so forth. So you're gradually slowing your breathing down, and if you can, you want to try to create gaps of 1 or 2 seconds in between each in and out breath. So while you're doing that, you also want to then notice your body. So you'll notice as you're breathing, changing your breathing, you may notice your body is, you may notice where there is tension, but you also may notice that as you change your breathing, how the tension may start to change. It may get worse, it may go away, but gradually it will eventually, you'll start to notice the tension slowly going away. So when that happens, you want to just observe the sensations in your body while you are prolonging your breathing and keeping it steady and making it gradually deeper and deeper. And you only want to observe it, so you don't want to judge it or try to get away from it. If you're feeling, you want to focus on the feelings, on the resistance, on the tension. If you have thoughts coming about, just observe them. So what you're doing is you're observing everything within you, and the point is not to judge them, just observe it while you're breathing. So this is why the point of attention is important, because as you're changing your breathing, as you're slowing it down, and then you're focusing on where the tension or the other emotional feelings are, what you're doing is you're essentially breathing into the feeling. So you may have heard this before in when other people talk about breathing techniques. They say you breathe into the emotion. So what they mean is you're placing your attention on one part of your body or onto the feeling, and then you're breathing in while you're placing your attention on that part. And then they're saying when you breathe out, you're breathing out, but you still have your attention on that part of your body. So the ideal is, and this is just, you don't have to do this, I don't always do it this way. Ideally, you want to get to a point where you're breathing in for 4 seconds, you're then holding it for 7 seconds, and then you're breathing out for 8 seconds. So you'd start off with short breaths, you'd gradually be prolonging it, and after focusing on observing your body, your mind, your emotions, not judging, eventually you want to build up to this 4, 7, 8. Of course, not everyone can do that, so just get as close as you can. So while you're doing this, you'll notice that there will be resistance within you. So as you keep breathing in and out, you'll notice there will be almost like a limit to how much you can breathe. And as you do it further and further, you'll notice that limit is the resistance, and it will get further and further away. That means that the resistance is being reduced. And so whatever you're feeling, whether it's the resistance, the anxiety, the tension, whatever it is, you want to feel it. So you want to put your attention on it and feel it as much as possible, which I know is going to sound scary, especially if you're having high levels of anxiety. I know it's difficult, it's really unpleasant. But as much as you can, feel the emotions, because the more you resist it, the more it will persist. Emotions are there to be felt. So when you feel them, emotions are a language. It's trying to tell you something. So when you're feeling anxious, it's a part of you that's saying, I think there's a problem, I think there's a threat. So the more you feel it, the quicker it will go away. And what can help, especially because with high levels of anxiety can be a very distressing experience, you want to remind yourself of past experiences when you've had anxiety and everything turned out fine. Because when you're in that state of being, it can immediately feel like something terrible is going to happen to you. So by reminding yourself, by reminding your mind, oh, we've been through this before, it's okay, nothing happened, I understand there's a threat being perceived, that can help to reduce the anxiety as well. But the key here with all of this is understanding you have to be persistent, because this does take practice. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It can, if you do this, it can definitely help to reduce anxiety in the moment. But as you know, as we're going about our daily lives, something can trigger anxiety, like how it used to happen in the past with me. So something can trigger the anxiety and you don't expect it. And then it's very difficult to immediately start doing this. So with practice, and if you do it enough times, it eventually becomes a habit. And what's amazing is if you practice this enough times, it becomes part of your everyday life. If it becomes an automated habit to the point where something can make you feel technically anxious, but then your mind and your body and your emotions will automatically start doing this on its own. So it becomes like a program you've created in your mind where, okay, something triggers anxiety, the anxiety comes up, and then before it even gets to a point of being really difficult to handle, you'll notice you're already doing this. And it's amazing because it does take practice. It took me, I don't know how long of practice to do this. When it becomes automatic, then you can really, really start to look into the deeper root causes of why you're experiencing high levels of anxiety. So there you have it. So this is, again, more of a temporary measure as a way to temporarily manage anxiety. But through doing this, this can then give you, the breathing space, no pun intended, this can give you the breathing space to then focus on what the exact root cause of the anxiety is. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.